Now we're going to install and degree our camshaft. Lubricate all the bearing surfaces and lobes with oil. And find the longest bolt you can that'll fit into the front of the cam. And this will be used as a lever so that you can control the cam while you're installing it. Go ahead and install this gear, the crank gear, and you can reinstall the bolt here because there's enough room between the keyway and the bolt to pull this off and readjust it if required as we degree the cam. So the first step is we're going to install the cam. Okay, and then at the end is where it gets the most difficult. We're going to have the most leverage against us here. Okay, and now we're installed. We need to install the cam retaining plate with these two bolts. This groove here moves oil to the camshaft, so you want to make sure that this groove aligns with this bolt. So now, off of the camshaft, hold the gear so that it's in that dot-to-dot position. And then as you slide the bottom gear in, the top gear will engage that dowel and the camshaft. Okay? Bolt goes right down the center, and then the oil slinger, there's a little tab on it that will engage the hole for the dowel. I've installed a degree wheel and a piece of wire bolted to the front of the block. This will be our indicator when we're doing our degree. Just use some safety wire and we'll adjust it as necessary as we find top dead center. Here's the setup for that. We've got our dial indicator, magnetic, mounted to the deck here. Put it directly in the center of the piston. That way if there's any rock of any kind, it won't affect the results because it'll be pivoting on that point. Make sure that your dial indicator is straight down the bore and all three axes so that you're getting an accurate reading. We'll also want to install all of our lifters. So just make sure they're been soaked in oil so that the inside of the lifter is full of oil. Soak them for at least a few hours. Coat the outside. Some people, they like to put this little squirt hole in one direction orientation or another. I prefer squirt hole down. Different folks have different theories on that. Then gently slide it into place. Make sure that you have the retaining part down. See, it's got an indicator for up. It'll capture the two adjacent lifters. Once you've done that, you don't need to watch me put all these on, but once you've done that, then you can install the spider retainer. So that one looks like this. It'll go like this, holding these retainers, and with two bolts. Okay, I've got all my lifters installed and my dial indicator set. And just a guess on where top dead center is here with my wire on the degree wheel. So now what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the engine one way and rotate it back the other way and see the highest point at which our dial indicator needle reaches. And so then we can adjust the zero using this outside of the dial indicator until we find that as we rotate through top dead center, the needle will approach zero, hit zero, and then come back from zero. That's a real close approximation of top dead center, but to get even more accurate, what we'll then do is we'll set it on the zero, the dial indicator zero. Then we'll set this on the zero, which I was pretty close on my guess here. Okay, so that's right on the zero. We'll just go 20 thousandths of piston down on both directions from top dead center and see how many degrees the wheel measures and if it's equal. So I'm going to go 20 degrees, or excuse me, 20 thousandths. Okay, so that's 20 thousandths right there, and it's showing 352 degrees. So we're 8 degrees off of top dead center. So now I'm going to go 20 thousandths the other way. And it's showing 8 degrees from top dead center. So that proves that when we're at top dead center on the piston, our indicator, our degree wheel, is exactly at 0. So now we've set our point of reference for our degree wheel. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move the dial indicator from measuring the piston height here to measuring cylinder number 1 lifter height. I'm going to show you the setup now for degreeing the cam. So you can use the deck of the block as your magnetic mount surface, and you want to place the end of the dial indicator on the side of the lifter so it's not engaged in the hydraulic part but in the solid part. And these lifters actually vary a little bit in terms of how wide the flat surface is. Let me get this in focus. So like some of them have a narrower flat surface and some of them have a wider one. So pick your lifters for the cylinder number 1. They have the widest surface because that'll make this job the easiest. If none of them seem to have a very flat surface, then you can change out this tip here on the dial indicator for one that has a big wide flat foot. That'll make the job easier. But I've got a wide enough flat surface here on both of these lifters. Another note, when you're going through the rotation, make sure you apply some steady pressure down because there's no spring pressure holding the lifter down against the cam profile. So you'll want to hold it with your finger so that it follows the cam profile going up and down through the full rotation. We've got the indicator zeroed. Now we're going to rotate through while holding slight pressure on top of the lifter here. And when the cam gets to 6,000, we'll note where we're at on the degree wheel. And I just want to show you the cam card here. This is what it's supposed to be for this cam. You can pause it to take a look at that in more detail. And then we'll just jot down on a piece of scratch paper where it actually winds up. So holding pressure here, and you can see we're approaching the intake valve opens area. And when it gets to 6 thousandths, right there, that's 6 thousandths, we're going to note what it says. So we can see that it says about 20, I'd say it's closest to 28 degrees before top dead center. Also note that I installed the little timing gear straight up in the 0 position. So this is what the cam should be at. So we're at 28 degrees before top dead center on 6 thousandths on the opening side. Then we can measure the complete lift as we come through. Again, continuing downward pressure, and we can see that's 319 thousandths. And then we're going to come back down to 6 thousandths. Right there. And we're showing 69 degrees after bottom dead center. So I'm going to jot those numbers down. I'll do the same for the exhaust and compare that with the cam card. Okay, after our measurements, there's a lot of numbers here, but I've boxed in the most important ones. After our measurements, you can see, if you just pause it here, that the duration came out a couple of degrees longer than what was on the cam card, and most of that was on the back end, so it was retarded a bit. So in order to preserve the mid-range power that's going to be very important for this engine in this application, we're going to advance the cam 2 degrees using our adjustable gear. So the way we do that is we'll take this bolt out on the cam gear, and then this whole thing will slide it out with the gear. You can take the chain off then, rotate the gear until the slot that says 2 degrees advanced, there'll be a different keyway, and then reassemble everything. We'll then want to remeasure everything because just because the gear says it's 2 degrees advanced doesn't mean it is exactly 2 degrees advanced. So we'll want to remeasure it, make sure that we're happy with where we wound up, and that we don't want to make another change, and then we can proceed with the build.